We're seeing data right now that 25% of millennials, their parents are paying for their housing in one way or another. Not good. Not good for your little millennial.
Dave Ramsey is so out of touch with what us millennials are currently facing. It's like, you know how incredible a statistic is that 1 in 4 millennials are living with their parents, and he doesn't want to discuss why. He's just like, this is a parental problem. You children, you need to get out of your houses. I don't want to talk about that data in this video, how us millennials can kind of overcome the issues, the financial burdens that we're facing, which is a lot worse than your out of touch boomer ass had to go through. And don't flag this video, please. Every time I show a Dave Ramsey clip, he flags my video. This is well within the common rights of content use, good sir. So just give me a little bit of respect here, man. But let's just take a listen to this and we'll break this down from my perspective anyways.
They are much better off to face some calluses, some stress, some hard times, make some hard choices, stand up and square their shoulders and be a man, be a woman, instead of a child. Coach them, cheer for them. If they're in a really hard pinch, be a safety net, but don't interfere.
Okay, let's just break this down from my perspective. This is going to be different no matter where you live, but I'm going to talk about my own personal circumstance. You can look at the data yourself because I'm sure this is broadly comparable to many places in the world. But firstly, let's just talk about you're starting out. You're 18 or 19. It's time to get out on your own. You need to go get an education because that's something that you've been force-fed by parents for generations. And let's just say you're one of the hardest working kids and you're like, you know what? I don't need student loans, even though God knows there's trillions of dollars of student loan debt, which Dave Ramsey, I'm surely doesn't agree with. So you're one of these people that worked 2 jobs, went to school, you partnered with a bunch of people in one little tiny bunk bedroom to kind of just get through a 3 or 4 year damn degree during a time where, since Dave Ramsey's been around, his boomer ass generation here in the 1980s and 90s, let's just take a look, because this again from the Board of Labor Statistics or whatever the hell, what was this from? Yeah, literally the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that the tuition fees for the most corrupt institutions on the planet, which I believe are colleges and universities, has increased 1,200% during the same time period where inflation is only up 236%. Have you seen the balance sheets of some of these like United States or even these Canadian schools? They are like of some of the richest. They were publicly traded companies. They'd be in the Fortune 500 list. Damn it. They are so unbelievably rich by ruining our generation. And this is something your generation set up, not ours, right? So let's just say you survived this. Let's just say you came out on the other end of this without being absolutely financially not burdened by 6 figures of student loan debt, which we know so many people are. Now, I'm going to look at this from the Canadian perspective here. I am a Canadian, and again, this I'm sure can be comparable in many places in the US, but when we look at the average wage, the literal average wage across the different Canadian provinces, you'd be shocked to find out that it really isn't much more than around $60,000 a year. I've gone to the Canadian government websites. There's a lot of different statistics that kind of bleed, but I always find it's usually between $50,000 and $70,000, right? And from the household income, this is even more shocking to me, that 5% of household incomes in Canada. So let's presume you're married, you have a spouse. The average here, well, not the average, 5%. This is the upper 5% of Canadian households make $162,000 a year. This is going to be very important. Bear with me with this number. It's going to be very prudent to actually owning a property, getting ahead in this life. But the 1% of household income in Canada earn $315,000 a year. I'd say the top majority, which is crazy here, the 50 to 75% of Canadians, the household is only between $46,000 and $81,000. That's most people you're going to meet in Canada. Just crazy numbers on an individual basis. Again, let's say you got that college degree, that 4-year degree. What does it actually turn into from a value standpoint? Well, the craziest thing to point out here is that 3 million Canadians, according to this, as of 2020, I'm sure this has changed over the last 2 or 3 years, but nonetheless, just taking a look, we have about 40 million Canadians now. We just crossed the 40 million population mark. So the income of 3 million of those 40 million Canadians are making about $100,000 a year or over, less than 10%, right? Which is still pretty crazy. Now, if you're making $75,000 a year, you're probably in the, I'm going to say, top 13 to 15%. That is crazy. I mean, think about that. 13 to 15% of Canadians are making $75,000 a year. That is such a low number, whereas comparably, the vast majority of Canadians making around $50,000 a year is about 11 million. So, I mean, that's like 25%. And another 16 million Canadians are making around $35,000 a year or over. So, I mean, the vast majority of Canadians are only making $50,000 to $35,000 a year. Like, if you're making $75,000 a year to $100,000 plus, you are literally in probably the top 15 percentile of Canadians, which again is absolutely mind-boggling. And I highly recommend that you go through like the wages in Ontario, because you'd be surprised at how these educations in financial management, and you look at the hourly income here and what you're actually likely to make, isn't that substantial for the cost of getting that same education, the time required, or going into crazy amounts of student loan debt to even get ahead. But let's say you went to school 18, 19, you're getting out now, you're 22, 23, you managed to do it with no student loan debt, and you're finally ready to get this high-paying job, where there really only is high-paying jobs. If you're in that upper percentile, you're probably working in one of the major metropolises of Vancouver or Toronto. Okay, so let's just talk about your income. Okay, let's just say you're in the upper percentile, you're making that $75,000 a year. Well, your after-tax income is probably going to be about $50,000 to $56,000. Again, this is the top 15% of workers, because nobody's just going to be walking into a six-figure salary. And if you are, I really want to congratulate you, because you are literally one of the exceptions here in this freaking province, this country of Canada. But taking a look, 56,000 a year, what does that equate to from a living circumstance? Well, we all know that in the last few years alone, and even the last year, the average one-bedroom apartment in the city has jumped 23%. So that $56,000 you're bringing in, well, $2,500 of that a month is just going to be going to your one-bedroom apartment. Let's presume you're not splitting it. You just got out on your own. You've been working too damn hard, your two jobs. You haven't had time to party or live or even have a slight social life. So you don't have a significant other to lean on. And you're going to be spending about, what is that, $30,000 a year. So there you go, 30,000 of your 56,000 gone. You got 26,000 extra a year. Well, let's presume you're going to need to eat. You're spending another $600 to $800 a month, and that's still pretty cheap food budget in this inflated food market. There goes another $6,000 to $10,000. So you may be left with an extra 15,000 over, and that's before we're talking about travel expenses. That's before we're talking about anything else like internet. God knows a lot of those utilities aren't going to be fully included in that rental price. So let's presume you're lucky if you even have 10,000 left over here, and you want to save, you want to get ahead, you want to have a great life. All right. So let's just talk about housing inflation. Again, Mr. Dave Ramsey, you've got millions of dollars and like hundreds of millions apparently in real estate during a time where real estate was clearly much more affordable, because my parents were able to afford a home with zero education, both of them working just regular jobs. How does somebody my age pull that off? My parents paid that off before they were 33. You know how crazy that is? Now look at housing inflation here. And again, this isn't even for Canada. I think this is mostly just for the US, but the housing prices have outpaced inflation by 150%. Millennials have probably one of the hardest financial situations than any generation prior, right? I mean, you look at how crazy that is. So again, from 1970 to today, housing inflation is up 1,600% versus inflation that in that same time period is up 644%. Again, we're not even talking about Canada, but let me just show you how comparably absurd it is. A lot of immigrants coming into Canada are super wealthy. I don't know who's buying these homes, the boomers, that like 30% of Canadians own their homes apparently, and that's got to be you boomers that got in like my parents did, because just look at the stats here. For Toronto alone, the average non-condo house is $1.16 million. That's Canadian. Converted to US, you're probably closer to $900,000. But just take a look at this. The months of savings, if your household annual income is $236,000, that's what you need, and it would take 304 months of savings required for the down payment, and that's a savings rate of 10%. 304 months. That is 25 effing years. You know how insane that is? That is a life sentence of saving, being in the highest percentile of income earners in Canada. Again, I need to go back to this housing stat. The 1% make $315,000. The top 5% only make $162,000. Just to put that in perspective about how crazy it is to be making a household income of $236,000 to afford a house that's $1.1 million. And I don't know where you're buying a house anywhere within the surrounding Toronto or GTA area for $1.1 million. You have to move like way the hell up. I mean, like hours north of the city. I mean, my parents live in cottage country, and even their homes, like normal detached homes, like comfortable, probably 2-3 bedroom homes, are already selling for $1 million. So let's say you're going to be buying a condo. Well, you're still going to have to be in the upper 5 percentile of making $165,000 a year, and only then would it take 58 months or about 5 years for you to actually afford the down payment. And we're only just talking about the down payment here. Do you know how insane this is? And this isn't something that's just happened in the last, this has been going on for a while, but this has only really happened in the last 5 years. Even go back several years ago, the housing market did not look like this. The cost of living and inflation did not look like this, let alone when you go back to Dave Ramsey's time. Now, you might just be saying, hey, get up, leave it, go somewhere more affordable. The fact is who cares about your family? Who cares about your friends or your mental well-being? The fact is you probably don't have any of that from the stress load that you've been dealing with for the last 5 years just to get to where you are today. And this is something we've absolutely considered because, hey, whereas the only affordable places in Canada live in the middle of butt F nowhere. Or hey, Calgary's nice, Edmonton's nice, but are you going to be having the same family lifestyle there? Or do you really want to give up everything that you've done, maybe even this high paying job in these metropolitan areas, to go make a lot less, but hey, have a little bit more affordability in your life? I mean, that is an absolute option, but my God, people, it goes far beyond just moving. And if there's one statistic that I can show you that proves that, hey, Statistics Canada says fewer babies born as Canada's fertility rate hits a record low in 2020. I wonder why the fertility rates have been falling off even coming into 2023. Well, and the country's fertility continues to decline further in the coming years, Canada could join countries with the lowest fertility rates, 1.3 or less children per woman, a situation associated with rapid population aging and increased stress on labor markets, public health care, and pension systems. Honestly, I think most people don't want to have kids because they just can't afford it, Mr. Dave Ramsey. Unlike, you go 2 generations ago and it wasn't uncommon to have 8 kids because they would be your laborers. And in your generation, you'd have multiple kids because, again, you'd have 2 regular jobs that allow you to afford that in general. It's just, I just can't get how out of touch our parents' generation really are. And I am somebody, hey, to solve this problem, what can we do? Well, we're already working 2 jobs. We're already doing everything we can bootstrapping to just try and get ahead. But maybe, just maybe, if you're doing this as hard as you can, your parents recognize it. They recognize you're not going out to Starbucks every day. They recognize that you're not, buying 5 different streaming subscription services. They recognizing that you're just working your damn ass off to get ahead in this life. And they say, hey, you know what? Maybe we could help you out just a little bit. Hey, we have this multi-million-dollar 3-bedroom house. Maybe just stay here a little longer, son. Stay a little longer, daughter. Maybe give yourself an extra 5 years just to help yourself get ahead. That'll let you save up. Have a little bit of extra income. We'll keep the family wealth together. Hey, maybe we'll give you a private loan from the markets exploding more than they ever have that you've never been able to take advantage of because you've been too busy with your student loans. That hey, maybe we'll privately loan you and maybe a decent interest rate for a down payment on a house, and that way we keep the money in the family instead of in this 6% interest rate environment where you can't get much loans below 6% to buy a house. That hey, maybe we can just keep that money in the family and you could pay us the interest rate. Hey, maybe we'll just help you out a little bit because oh my God, this isn't the world it was even several years ago, folks. This is just my humble opinion as somebody that's been living with their parents, that gets made fun of for living their parents, which I honestly think is just a cultural thing. It seems to be a white person cultural thing. I know a lot of foreigners, Muslims, Mexicans. I talk to all kinds of different cultures, and they all say it is pretty normal. I know Russian families where the grandparents, the kids, and the grandkids are all living in a multi-million-dollar mansion together, and they're all just chipping in. Dave Ramsey is just so diluted in the 2023 era. I just don't get it. But I'll pass that question off to you. I'd love to know what you think in the comment section below.